I believe that a Netflix for video game subscription service is definitely profitable. I just think that out of Microsoft, Sony, and Nintendo, Microsoft has the weakest one in terms of sustainability. And that is incredibly ironic since Microsoft is the father of Game Pass. Day one, first-party games sounds like an incredible deal on paper, and that's a big if, the games are actually good. However, I believe that Nintendo's approach is the strongest when it comes to sustainability and profitability, followed by Sony and then Microsoft in last place. Nintendo's is the strongest for two reasons. First, it is the cheapest of all the subscription services at $50 per year for the highest tier of the service. And the second reason is the Netflix for video games library in this scenario are old legacy titles. The use case of their service is to make old classic games that are still incredibly good, easily accessible in the modern era. They even went above and beyond by creating a total of 5 different controllers that are replicas of the platforms that they support to further deliver that authentic experience. This model results in next to nothing development costs when it comes to the content creation for the service, and allows them to keep the cost of the service at a more affordable level compared to the competition. I believe the legacy model is the way to go for these types of subscription services. Sony is making efforts to include more classic titles in their catalog, even going as far as adding more enhancements to the game, such as trophy support. I think Sony does a better job at having a more sustainable model when it comes to modern games in the service. Their big games aren't put on the service day one. They allow them to sell and essentially flatline, and then use those games as a way to get more people into the subscription service, and then those games don't even stick around forever. Then there's Microsoft. These guys are cursed with always having the right idea, but execute way too early, and then make bad decisions out of desperation. The birth of Game Pass can be traced back all the way to the initial reveal of the Xbox One. With Microsoft botching this reveal so bad, this led them to struggle desperately to recover this generation. And thus, the birth of Game Pass. It was a good deal and very successful at first due to its cheap price point. They eventually announced that all first-party games would come to Game Pass day one. This was one hell of a promise, and no one knew how it could possibly work. Fast forward to today, and you see all the Xbox gaming layoffs, and yeah, who could have saw that coming? You know, when I heard about the ZeniMax and Activision Blizzard acquisitions, I thought this was what was needed for Microsoft's Game Pass success in terms of bigger legacy back catalog and more frequent / better day one titles. But for some reason, even with the infinite Microsoft money, Xbox or Microsoft or whoever made this call didn't believe in themselves. It would have been pretty anti-consumer in a way, but this was Microsoft's opportunity to make Call of Duty a first-party Xbox exclusive. They could have created a world where if you wanted to play, say, Call of Duty, you need to buy an Xbox. If you don't want to pay full price for Call of Duty, you have the option of subscribing to Game Pass, which has the goal of tricking the consumer to paying more in the long run via smaller monthly payments compared to if they just bought the game outright. And yes, Call of Duty is an arguable example because of microtransactions and player count. Like, they may have wanted this to be on multiple platforms specifically, and maybe many people would have stopped playing instead of just buying an Xbox because they already have PlayStation or they were playing on PC. But there definitely would have been people who did convert. Pick your favorite ZeniMax, Activision, or Blizzard IP. They could have converted many of these people into becoming Xbox owners. Elder Scrolls 6 could have been a system seller at that point, but instead, they went in the opposite direction. I'm sure at this point, it'll be a day one launch title on PS5 as well. Yes, instead of forcing people to buy an Xbox with all these exclusive IPs, they lacked confidence and had short-sightedness that they decided to start releasing their biggest games on PS5 and Nintendo Switch. This definitely boosted sales, but they are now losing the ability to build a brand and a legacy, something that is allowing Nintendo Switch Online to exist and operate so clean and so lean. If Microsoft hoarded all their newly bought IP into their own ecosystem, they would have put up a decent competition to Sony and Nintendo. They own some great IP now, and if they did so, they could have been more profitable, which would have given studios more time and leeway to make games. More games, better games, less layoffs. But no, they decided to cheapen their brand. Say what you want about Nintendo, if they are being greedy or not, but they hardly discount their biggest first-party games, 20 to 33% discounts tops. Yeah, this sucks as a consumer, but what else does it do? Nintendo is declaring and standing firm that their IP is premium, their brand is premium. Let's talk about Mario 3D All-Stars for a minute. Why do you think this was a limited time release? It's because Nintendo knows these 3D Mario games are games people will subscribe to Nintendo Switch Online to play. They don't want people to own them. If they own them, that's less reason to subscribe. The limited release was done to not cheapen their Game Pass subscription service as much. With no Mario or Zelda, that is just less reason to subscribe, and they know that. You will never see their games on Xbox, PS5, or PC. If you want to play a Nintendo game, you need to buy Nintendo hardware, you need to buy their software, and you need to subscribe to their services. Xbox, on the other hand, it now feels so cheap. Why would I buy an Xbox game for $80 when it'll be $20 on PS5 in a couple of months? They had all the cards. I don't know if someone was just impatient on making the money back after the ZeniMax and Activision Blizzard acquisitions, or if they were trying to be pro-consumer, or if they just really didn't believe in themselves anymore. I have all the consoles. I play all kinds of games. Xbox making these IP exclusive wouldn't have bothered me personally. In fact, I may have actually gotten more use out of my Series X. Here I am, buying Xbox games on PS5, even though I have a Series X and a PC. I just use my PS5 more because, guess what? The PS5 exclusive first-party Sony games. And if Sony starts to follow suit with this new Helldivers on Xbox thing, next thing you know, Nintendo Switch 2 is going to be the only place where you can play every game ever. Game Pass, when it is defined as a Netflix for video game service, is definitely a profitable revenue stream when it's used for making legacy content accessible in the modern era. And of course, Microsoft even made a big backwards compatibility push at one point, and then they just decided to stop, probably thinking they weren't making any money from that effort. But what they should have done was continue and feed those games into Game Pass, instead of needing to rely on paying third-party studios for a limited time license for their games, in addition to needing to fund and create new big first-party titles. Microsoft and Nintendo's Game Pass implementations are night and day when it comes to cost of adding and maintaining content, with Sony sitting nicely in the middle. I do like Sony's model of the free monthly games, something Xbox used to do, but stopped because they decided they would rather just put them in a Game Pass. I don't know, something about the free monthly games feels like my own personal library, even though I only have access to it when subscribed. But after years, it's like my own little Game Pass on PlayStation. I have no idea how Microsoft fumbled this so hard. It seems so obvious to keep that freshly bought IP in-house and treat it as premium content. But instead, they cheapened it to the point where the whole brand now feels like a joke. I want them to succeed, mainly because I want these IP to survive and not get shut down because of their bad leadership. What are your guys' thoughts on the Game Pass situation? What would you have done differently if you had all the power at Microsoft? Leave a comment down below and let's discuss further. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.